Welcome. Today, we're going to tackle a really critical issue, the unprecedented delay in India's national census. For the first time in 143 years, this fundamental exercise of national self-assessment is on hold. So, why does this matter? Because when a nation stops counting its people, it really risks losing count of its biggest challenges and its greatest opportunities. Let's dig in and find out what this delay truly means for India's governance and its future.
So, here's what we're going to cover today. We'll start with the delay itself and why it's such a big deal, historically. Then we're going to jump into the really thorny issue of counting caste. From there, we'll explore how migration is actually distorting our elections and what a move to a digital census could mean for all of our privacy. And of course, for those of you preparing for your civil services exams, we'll wrap up with a dedicated revision session. All right, let's get started. So, first things first, let's talk about this delay. This isn't just a missed deadline. We're talking about a 143-year-old tradition being broken. And honestly, the consequences are massive.
Just think about this for a second. Since 1881, through world wars, famines, even the partition, India has conducted a census every single 10 years. It's been a constant. But the 2021 census, it was postponed. Now, the official reason was the pandemic. But during that same time, major state elections went ahead. So breaking this 143-year chain, well, it's left us with a huge data vacuum.
And, the sheer scale of this information gap, it's just staggering. By the time the next census data is finally published and out there, we could be looking at a 16 to 17-year-old picture of India. That's the longest data gap since independence. And the consequences, they touch every single aspect of how the country is run.
And believe me, these aren't just abstract problems. This decaying data means welfare programs might be missing millions of people who need them. It means our cities are being planned for a population that existed a decade ago. It means federal funds are being distributed based on numbers that are completely outdated. And critically, it delays the redrawing of electoral constituencies, what we call delimitation, which in turn pushes back the implementation of women's reservation in parliament all the way to the mid-2030s.
Okay, now for what might be the most contentious part of this entire process, the question of caste. Should the census count it or not? It's a debate that goes right back to the very founding of the Republic. You have to go all the way back to 1931, under colonial rule, to find the last comprehensive caste count. After independence, the thinking was that if we don't officially count caste, it would help in nation building and maybe even dilute caste identities. Now, an attempt was made in 2011 with the socioeconomic and caste census, but that data was never made public. Officially, they said it was due to quality concerns, though a lot of people believe it was because of how politically sensitive it was. This whole debate really boils down to two opposing views. On one side, you have proponents who argue that you just can't have social justice without data. A caste count would provide real demographic evidence to design better policies for marginalized groups, policies based on reality, not just assertions. But on the other side, opponents worry that officially counting caste will only reinforce those identities, leading to more divisive politics and undermining that original goal of nation building. This quote from former Chief Election Commissioner S.Y. Qureshi, it really gets to the heart of the matter. The argument here is that choosing ignorance is not a neutral position. For a democracy to actually function effectively and address its social realities, it needs data, even if that data is complex and, uncomfortable.
All right, let's shift gears. We need to talk about a huge, often invisible part of India's story, internal migration. The way our current system works, it creates a major democratic problem where people are counted in one place but can only vote in a totally different one.
So this process, it creates a fundamental democratic problem. You've got tens of millions of people who build our cities and run our factories, but their votes are still registered back in their ancestral villages. So the census counts them in the city where they live and work, but they have absolutely no say in that city's local governance. This makes urban governments completely unaccountable to a huge portion of their actual residents. And here's the real kicker. Our own electoral laws say that you should be registered to vote where you normally reside. The solution is right there in the law, but the implementation is just not there. And the result is what we have today. A system where millions of people build our cities but have no voice in how those cities are run.
So the next big thing to talk about is that this upcoming census, it's going to be India's first ever digital one. And this technological leap forward, it brings both incredible opportunities and some pretty significant risks that we really need to consider carefully.
The move to a digital census really presents a classic trade-off. On one hand, the benefits are clear: faster enumeration, fewer errors, and quicker results. But on the other hand, the risks are just as significant. Digitized personal data raises huge privacy concerns. The big question on everyone's mind is, will this data be linked with other databases like Aadhaar or the National Population Register to build these comprehensive citizen profiles for surveillance?
This is why having strict legal constraints is non-negotiable if you want to build public trust. The data collected must be used for statistical purposes only. It cannot be shared with law enforcement or used for citizenship verification. Without these legal firewalls, the census risks being seen not as an instrument of fairness, but as a tool of surveillance and central control.
All right, for all of you preparing for your mains exams, let's boil all of this down into some key takeaways that you can use in your answers. First up, remember to frame the delay as an unprecedented constitutional event. Link it directly to the 84th Amendment and the consequent delay in both delimitation and women's reservation. Then, detail the governance failures that stem from that 16 to 17-year data gap, everything from welfare schemes to federal fund allocation.
Now, for a balanced answer, you have to analyze the arguments both for and against the caste census. That need for data for social justice versus the risk of deepening social divisions. And critically, explain how internal migration creates a democratic deficit, where urban governance is basically unaccountable to millions of its own residents.
Finally, make sure you conclude by discussing the digital census. Weigh the benefits of efficiency against the real risks to privacy. The key takeaway here is that technology has to be paired with robust legal frameworks to maintain public trust. A successful census has to be comprehensive, accurate, transparent, and legally protected. Okay, now to put all this knowledge into practice, let's take a look at a potential question for your mains examination.
So here's the question to ponder as you prepare. Use the points we've covered, the constitutional implications, the big debates on caste and migration, and the risks of a digital future to build your analysis. Ultimately, a census is so much more than just a headcount. It's a mirror that a nation holds up to itself. The big question now is, when will India decide to look in that mirror again? See you again tomorrow with an important editorial. For this, subscribe to the YouTube channel Unlock UPC. Thank you.